Okay, what we're working on in this section is segment relationships in circles. So there's a couple relationships you need to know. The first one is when you're dealing with two chords. Okay. If two chords intersect in the interior circle, then the product of the two lengths of each chord are equal. And so actually it's what happens is this, let's highlight it. This chord, this chord right here, A to B, is split into two parts. And so that first part is A to D, and we're going to multiply it by the second part, D to B. And that's going to equal the same idea on this other chord. And so the first part on that other chord is E to D. That's going to be times by the whole rest of it, which is D to C. And so once you set that up, you should be able to solve for something and find a missing piece. Okay? Same idea when you have a tangent and a secant. So here's my tangent. And here's my secant. Okay, and what happens with them is if a secant and tangent intersect outside of the circle, which they do here, then the product of the two segments from the secant, so this one and this one, so product means multiply, so I'm going to multiply AC times CE is equal to the square of the tangent. So I don't have two pieces to multiply here, so what I do is I just square it, or I do AD times AD. I do the same thing. You can do either of those, okay? So it's first piece, second piece, and then the whole thing. Okay, the third and last rule we have is if you have two secants, and it's very similar to the other ones. The other rules, so I have the secant up top, and then I have the secant on the bottom. And so it's the same idea, is that then the product of the two segments from one chord is equal to the product of the two segments from the other chord. So my first part is AC, and I'm going to times that by the other part, CE. That's the same as A to B times B to D. So it's the same idea for all of these. The only one that's really different is this tangent one, and that's because there's only one piece, so you don't have anything else to multiply it by. All right, so let's go ahead and do some examples so you can see what happens. So I have here, so the two pieces I have, let's kind of highlight, that might make it easier. I have this one, which is 6 times 5, and then I have this one, which is 2 times x plus 1. So that's 30 is equal to, I'm going to distribute, 2x plus 2, minus 2 on both sides, so you get 2x is 28, divide by 2, and x is 14. Okay? What I'd like you to do is try and set up number 2 to see if you can get an equation, and you can try and solve it, or you could just set it up and then check to see where you're at. When you think you have it, press play. Okay, so you should have had these two together. So 15 times 5x minus 2 is equal to the other two, 10 times 7x. So now the first thing I have to do is I have to distribute that 15, and 15 times 5 is 75, so 75x, and then I'm going to distribute it to the 2, minus 30 is equal to 70x. So I'm going to go ahead and minus the 70x, and I get 5x minus 30 is 0. I'm going to add 30 to both sides, so 5x is 30. I'm going to divide by 5 on both sides, and so x is 6. Okay? All right, let's look at the last two. Same idea. Why don't you try and set them up, and then once you think you have it, press play. You can solve it all the way, or you can just set it up. So the first one right here, those two. So 2 times x plus 3 is equal to these two. X plus 2 times 1. And so I get 2x plus 6 because I distribute. Distributing by 1 doesn't do anything, so I just get x plus, I'm sorry. Oops. Get rid of that. 2, so you get x plus 2 minus x on both sides, and I get x plus 6 is equal to 2. And then I'm going to minus 6 on both sides, and x is negative 4. Something's wrong with these numbers, because if I plug in a negative 4, I would get a negative number. And so let's see if I made a mistake. 2x plus 3. So this right here, this does not work. This is kind of a false solution, so there's no solutions. Because none of these numbers, when you plug something in, you shouldn't have a negative distance. So that's actually going to be a no solution. There's no solution that works. All right, over here, let's try this one. X plus 1. Now, because that's the tangent, it's just x plus 1 times x plus 1. And then over here, it's these two. So it's 5 and x minus 1. Remember, when you distribute this, you get x squared, 1x. And then I have to distribute this 1x, and 1. And then over here, I get 5x minus 5. So when I combine these, I get x squared plus 2x plus 1 is 5x minus 5. You're not going to have many problems like this, but we need to make sure you understand how to do this if you do see it. I need to subtract a 5x on both sides and add 5 on both sides. And I get x squared minus 3x plus 6 is 0. And there are not any factors of 6 that add to give me 3. So this one's not able to be done too. Something happened here. I'm thinking maybe I created wrong problems or I typed something in wrong, because both of these didn't work and they should work. Okay, so just understand the process. I know that these didn't work, but in class we'll practice them where they will.